it down, but dulled down the intensity and was like, no, like just this is what we're gonna do.
You're conditioned. You're there, right?
What are we gonna do? Why are we gonna keep hitting each other? So that was you could feel it as a staff, that's for sure. In the 14th week,
so everybody felt that, though.
Yeah.
Because you're not going in, if you're at 14 weeks and you don't know what you're running.
And you're conditioning.
And
Right.
you're like, well, when I growing up in St. John, speaking of, the week of the state championship, we ran lines. And I'm like, Morgan. But, I mean, that was a different time. But like now, thinking of what we did, I'm like, yeah, it was, I think everyone's a little tired.
And the kids literally, we listened to Christmas music in their girdles and no
Yeah.
jerseys on the Thursday before we went down.
Right.
On Thanksgiving Day, they listened to Christmas music, and they were in their girdles and nothing else, and just shoulder pads.
And I don't know if that doesn't necessarily speak to overconfidence or cockiness, but just the level of preparedness
They're
you guys have as a
loose.
team.
And
That's what I loved.
And I think there's huge to talk about that, right? Is like the state, the
Right.
team as a whole.
And like before the game, Brenton Walker was pretty nervous, so he was walking around the locker room. Then they did like this line of just follow Brenton around, and like the whole team got in this like cha-cha slide line, like and just followed Brenton
That's what I came
around
back
the
from that little thing, and I walk in, I'm like, what the heck?
They just walked the locker room waiting for him to go back out to the field, because usually they're out on the field. They get to move around before every game. They were like, no, you guys can't leave. Stay in here until we come get you.
Well, the week before they wouldn't let you off the bus for a half hour in the rain. Really.
Yeah, we
It's
show up and they
crazy.
said they weren't ready. And I'm like, you guys have known we're coming.
Right.
For how long?
And we're not 45 minutes away. We could just,
Yeah.
it's a 4-hour drive. We actually don't
Because
know
that's what
when we're going to get there.
The Mesa AD told Shane, because Shane got off the bus and just went and talked to him, and he's like, well, you guys are early. And Shane's like, yeah, we live 4.5 hours away. We planned for like something happening,
Right.
construction or something. And he goes, well, we're not ready for you guys.
Well, and then just like the timing when the AI gets involved with the postseason, like nobody on the field before 5:15,
So
or
weird.
you can't run. Like we saw that teams could walk the field, but you could not do any kind of warm up. You could not engage in prep. I guess like I'm sure there's wording right that specifically calls out the reasoning for it. But and that's maybe something to talk about too is the difference between what we see as like mountain ball, and we play a certain way all season, and then we get to the postseason, and then it's like, will they let you play the style of football that we're accustomed to
I was
playing?
worried about that.
So I guess how did that feel? Like, was that normal? Do you feel like, because I feel like the last two games, they kind of let us play our game, or the officials really let us have it, or did you guys prep the team to kind of dial back a bit? Was there any difference in play?
No, I think the officials did a pretty good job. Like because I think we talked about it. One of the big worries is when you go down there, is what you said. You're wondering, are these refs, are they going to let us play how we play? Because we play physical, and we can't do what we do if we don't play with intensity and physical and all those things. And
Well, then you get gun shy.
Yeah.
And then Ken
Then you're worried about it.
Lane pulls back,
Yeah.
and then he's not being aggressive. So how'd that affect the defense?
Well, and that's where we kind of go in. Where I don't want to change ever going into the playoffs, because I don't want them to think, well, I was scared of them. We're changing our defense for this team. So I try to make it where, and then we were never changed. Like even if the refs are calling it, I'll take the penalties. I tell the kids, if that's too much aggression and they call a penalty on them, it's welcomed. Like we'll take it. We'll just live with it and play football through it. So that's kind of that was my mentality going down there, was just like, we're going to go and play our football. We didn't change a lot in this. We adjusted our defense, but no changes. There was no schematic or this guy's unreal and we got to double team him everywhere he goes. No, we just had a lineup where let's bump him off the line. This is what we do. This is what we do moving forward on that side. So that was kind of the thing. I don't want to ever change our kids to think that they have to play different style of football. That's the last thing I'll ever tell a kid. We'll be more physical and take penalties moving forward.
The thing about him that's been why they can do that, 3 years now? 3 years ago, he started this, and it was baby steps. I mean, we were running one coverage in 7-on-7 as you figure out how to run cover 2, and then we'll move on. We were teams were just running through the seam. They're running the seam over and over, and it's like, adjust, figure out how to cover it. Because we're not going to change anything until you know how to run this. And then the next step, once they're like, okay, we can now play cover 2 and almost defend anything. And then it's like, okay, I'm going to introduce you to this, which is similar to cover 2, but it's a little different. And the kids were just like, oh, okay. And it was one step. The teaching that he does in running this defense is why when you get to this portion of the playoffs, it was, we don't have to change anything because they know everything. They've already been taught. Some of those guys, Brenton, Jeffrey, Lane, they've been in it for 3 years. They know exactly, okay, we need to do this against this. Okay, we've been doing that for 3 years. We know exactly what he's asking us to do.
So the question you ask is, okay, so preseason, how did us get ready? Like, how does the state championship come about? And you're telling me that this is 3 years in the making, that these kids were freshmen, the juniors were freshmen, the seniors were underclassmen. When really the prep begins for success, especially on the defensive side, to look like?
Yeah, we don't run. We like this year, we had zone blitzes in week 1. We didn't call a zone blitz year 1, if that makes sense. Like their sophomore year, the senior class is sophomore year. We didn't zone blitz. Like, you know what I mean? That's where, until you had the foundation, you can't build a house unless you have a foundation, if that's the kind of the thought process behind it. So that's kind of where I always kind of go from that. Like, we have to, if we don't have a good foundation, we're never going to be able to build anything.
So now that you're here, you've worked 3 years and you have this structure made. Talk to me about how you sustain that. Because now you have your seniors leaving, your freshmen coming in. How do you reiterate and reincorporate that stability as a defense with new coming in and old leaving?
Well, we expect our juniors to step up and lead within the process, and then I always try to make adjustments based on talent level of what we had. Like having Jeffrey and Brenton as the safeties this year, they're 2 first-team all-conference safeties. You could put a lot on them that allows you to be adjusting where they can cover the deep path and make a tackle in -2 yards.
And how many times do we see that?
Yeah,
right,
so you're like, so that's where you go, and I can put a lot of pressure on the safeties and run that. Now this next year, I have two kids that played quite a bit of varsity this year. They're ready to go, but are they going to be that ready yet? So maybe I scale it down to protect them a little bit better in that sense, and say instead of running this defense more, we're going to run this defense, and then tweak the coverages just a little bit to make them, whatever we have as athletes is more important than the scheme we have.
That's awesome.
The thing that way is kind of how I always just try to design the defense in the offseason.
And I feel like that almost flips how you guys pointed at the picture behind us that the people can't see, but we talked about how we played football, and it was, this is what we're doing. We're running wishbone, period.
Yes.
Right? And we might get a little fancy once, right? But now instead of doing that, saying this is Alba's way, it's we're going to play to the players, and we're going to incorporate a defense that makes sense around the strengths of the individuals of the team that make up the whole.
I mean, if that's any way, you think of athletes that way. Like, if I'm not giving them to put their attributes at their best level, then they're going to always be like, oh, I wish I had more. Now when a kid leaves here, they're like, hopefully I used all his ability level to the best he's ever played. And that's where I think that's one thing, and Brad's done a great job in letting me have that freedom, because sometimes it's hard to see when you're running. Like, and then Hawes' specialty and all that, like you're going through and kind of going, what the hell's he doing? Excuse my language.
Well, so that people asked this year, why is Jackson Crick on the defensive line? And is it because you guys have the ability to see potential? You let it happen, where you're not just saying, well, Jackson, here's where you're going to sit and this is your job. Last series in the defense of the state championship game, we saw Brody Crick enter the ball game. Something we never saw him on that side of the ball, but able to leverage their abilities and their capabilities when needed.
When I was at camp, Brad comes to me after we talked about, so we're talking offensive defense morning. I don't remember if it was morning or afternoon. It was the defensive time, and I was introducing the defense. Even though the kids played 3 years, we still go back and teach it like if they've never seen it, camp, and go over again. And so we're talking about Brad after we broke. He's like, let's put Jackson on the D-line. It creates havoc, and that's Hawes' specialty is what he gets a 120-pound, 160-pound kid that just create havoc for offenses, and people complain about it, but that's a Round Valley specialty. Like, that's Hawes has been for 20 years, had that small kid doing it. And so Brad comes to me, let's play Jackson on the D-line, and I'm kind of hesitant because he's a freshman. I don't know where he's at.
Right.
So I get there, and then we try him, and Robert's like, he's the best 11. We're going to play the best 11, and that's something that and then I let Hawes run with it, and like you said, you see the end result. And then we wanted to run a little different thing for their on 3rd and long. When we go to Brody in the championship game, we wanted a man-up coverage, do a little cover 2-man in that situation. And so we wanted a little more speed in the D-line with Tucker being hurt, so we put Titan Myers, and normally a safety. He went down to nose guard. And then Brody Crick comes in and plays man coverage or deep third safety. So that's kind of where we use, like, again, the attributes of each kid to try to attack and always, kind of that swarm and punish mentality.
Something that really impressed me that you made me think of while you were talking is the polish that I saw during a walkthrough, day of game, before the team gets to eat a little bit and get ready to get serious. You guys get around the circle in the middle of the field and talk through teams. And what was super impressive to me was, I remember, and this was middle school, right? But I remember Merrill Hamplin making us run laps when the punt team didn't get out on the field, when the 11 that were on punt team couldn't remember. But not only did the 11 for punt team get on the field, but you would call out a player. Okay, Jackson gets hurt. Okay, Jeffrey can't come out, like, for whatever reason. And 2 to 3 deep every time, those kids knew where to be. They knew what they were going to do, and they knew who they were covering for. How does that polish come about? How do you build a team that has that mental I guess, strength? Because they're ready, not just physically. You condition them, you prep them, we're ready to play the game, but then that mental stability as well when things need to shake up, and they do. They're ready.
I think it's 100% the head coach. Brad's a well-prepared head coach, so it's totally his thing. He's done this. Something I've never done until I got here. So when I got here working with Brad, even before I was an assistant, just as a varsity assistant a couple years before I took over the defense, Brad did this, and he made sure that Round Valley was always the most prepared. And I go think back at when I was head coach at Safford, I wish I'd have done this. Like, I was more like Backup being the head coach. That's just his preparedness that I was very impressed with since coming to Round Valley.
I can't even take credit for the circle we do where we call them out. That's Marcus Bell. Did that the whole time I coached with him. And it was one of those things I took from him that I was like, this is a good idea to be able to just, and it's like you said, it's every part of the game. It's special teams, it's defense, it's offense. And I think what we like in those kind of moments is that they have to be mentally focused. And the walkthrough, Alba talks about it all the time, is this is a mental rep. It's not a physical, we're trying to kill each other. I want you to have mental reps. And those little mental reps that I know kids, because I remember doing walkthrough and being like, good grief, is this ever going to happen?
Right.
But when you see it, when they're doing it, and they're just like, okay, because there were weeks where Monday offense did not look good. By Wednesday, it's a little better. Thursday, Friday, it's like, it's all clicking. And defense too, special teams, everything by Thursday, Friday, and it's just that. Going throughout the week, going through all those steps to get to the game on Friday, Saturday, whatever it is, and be prepared. And it was, it's all of these coaches. If you knew the amount of preparation that Alba puts in, that Coach Tricky puts in, that Haas puts in, that these guys put into every single week, it would blow people's minds how much film they watch, how much they think about this, to where it's not just you show up on a game and be like you said, we don't just say, well, I guess we run this play, so let's just keep running this play because it worked last week. It's what's going to work this week because we know what they're going to do. We know how they play. So it's every week preparing them. And then to the kids' credit, they bought into all of that. They didn't just – we've had years past where I've coached and some kids buy in, some kids do what you ask them to do. They watch film, they do all this. It was these kids were bought in for a long time. And they saw, okay, we are the best team. Now if we just prepare and play that way, we're going to go as far as we want to go. And I think it was a big credit to the kids. Looking back on the mental part that you talked about, I think the weight room is where they really started learning. Alba and Tricky taking over the weight room changed a lot for this to happen this year. It was, we had to get mentally tough, and you get mentally tough when you're putting weight on the thing and saying, okay, last week I benched 185, I'm going for 205. And you may not be able to do it, but you're saying, I'm going to push myself to try to get to that spot. So when you're in a game, and Tricky talks about it all the time, when you get to a game, you're looking at it and you're like, oh yeah, I can go farther. And you're also saying, I worked with all these guys all summer when 5 o'clock in the morning, 5:30 in the morning, they were there with me. And they're going to be there with you at the very end. So all of that attributed to how mentally tough they were. It wasn't just that we had this great scheme to make them mentally tough. It's they bought it, and they did what we asked them to do. So a big credit to them.
So So we've seen levels of that every year, of that buy-in and how it works. What made this year so different or special? So two things you see is the culture that just worked. You talked yesterday or the day before we were talking that even pre-practice they're doing things, they're repping. What made this year work so much that the kids bought in, they were in, and they were doing those things, and they were more of a team? I heard the word brotherhood about 9 million times this season. What made that happen? And also, what made the team so successful at siloing each week's victory and then preparing for the next?
That's a good question. But I think the thing that was made this team special and why they were that way, there's a group of leaders that were just there, and there's quite a bit of them. I mean, we usually have one or two. There was a bunch. And they bought into that early on in the year. And I'm thinking of things, just little things that happen throughout the year of them stepping up and buying in, but also saying, like, we got to help each other. One of the best things I heard, and it happened later in the season. I think it was before Chrisman, or maybe Valley Christian, but one of those weeks. So I have a group text with like 14 of them, the leaders, whatever. And Kason Finch usually never says much. He doesn't talk a whole lot. On Sunday night, he sends a text to the group and says, hey, we have a chance to be great or something. And he says, let's show up tomorrow and this week and do whatever we need to do to be successful. I can't remember word for word what he said, but that was kind of what he said. And all of the kids, all 14 of them, were like, let's do this, let's go. And that's just a little leadership thing where you look at it and you say, that's a little thing for someone to say. But then you're like, this is a kid that bought in to this whole thing. And so did the rest of them. And why they're special. I mean, there's so many reasons why these guys are special. I mean, they really cared about each other. Like, I asked Brody Crick one time, I think it was last game of the season, playoffs. I was like, dude, you know you have 20 touchdowns? And he's like, I don't even ever look at that. And I was like, I gave him a hug, and I'm like, that's why I love you. Because you don't care. They didn't care. They didn't care if when his brother scores, he's the first one down there, high-fiving him, tapping him on the head. I mean, this is just how they were. They weren't worried about, oh, am I the guy? Am I going to be the one that gets a score? Do I get the credit? It was just, let's just go win. And
yeah, that would be the only thing. They cared more about the stat, is the 1-0 each week. Was their stat they cared more about than any personal stats. So they wanted to go 1-0 every week, and that's to get the win. And that's the thing. The selflessness of this team would be the huge thing. That's like Brad just said. Is there? No one was like, oh, I wanted this, I had this, and that wasn't. Why didn't I get the ball? And you never heard that from the team. There was never a complaint. And you always had kids that wanted to help the team more, not that they wanted to be. Because if we didn't have athletes that didn't want to score more, that's kind of crazy in today's world. But they all wanted to score because they wanted to help us be like not lose and not make sure we win by more. I wish I'd have scored so we could have helped them here, or man. But you see, and like Brad said, when Brody'd score or anybody scored, 10 guys were running to the end zone to celebrate. Like that's what they were running 40 yards. So like most people, are like, oh, I'm not all celebrating with them on the sideline. They ran 40 yards to go score, to just dab up a Brody in the end zone. So you just see that as the awesomeness of the culture here. And then I say like 98% of our kids were over 90% in the summer, 6 a.m. lifting, and then all took the 0-hour weights class. Like that's 90% of our kids are in that class and lifting all summer. So you look at that, and that's just the culture that the kids have bought in and done what we want them to do in that regard. And so that's what you see. They're willing to kind of sacrifice what's best for them, is sleep and all the stuff in the summer. And you know what? They want to go out with their friends the night before they go to bed. So then when you go to that, it's natural to be like, I'll sacrifice a touchdown, or he gets another carry for me, because that's what we've built within the culture and under Brad's leadership in this Round Valley football.
In a world of instant gratification, I think you see that less and less
That's-
because it is all about the 6 points and me, so I can post it. I'm going to throw that on Instagram or whatever, right? Where we just,
Yeah, and that's what I love. What he just said. That being able to see, not the instant gratification, but we have this goal that's way down here. I mean, you're starting in January, really, when they're like, okay, we're getting back to lifting in January. And they're saying November 29th is way down the road.
Yeah.
And to be able to say, I'm going to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, is you don't know what's happening. You don't know the outcome. You don't know if all of that you did at 5:30 in the morning is ever going to pay off. So that's a trust they had in what we asked them to do, which you don't always have because you have kids. And I'm going to give some credit to parents, because parents bought in to say, you're going to be there at 5:30 in the morning because this is where you want to be. If you want to really be there, you're going to be there at 5:30. And that's where I think the whole thing kind of came together, is parents were bought in, kids were bought in, the administration was bought in, the fans were bought in, the kids were bought in, the coach, everybody was bought in.
Yeah.
So it made it easy in my eyes as a coach to be like, well, if everybody's going to help, like, this is easier for us to do. It's not that not winning a state championship is easy. I'm not saying that, but it made it easier for us to be like, okay, here's what we need, and then boom, they just took off.
It was amazing to see that happen over and over and over again through big things, little things, just over the course of the season. The community showed up, the players showed up, the team showed up. Every week that the kids got fed, just you see at different layers at different times that just the community showed up for the team, and it's because of what you guys have built, because the boys believed, bought in, and were there at 5:30 in the morning because of the leadership that they have. So coaches, talk about your staff, talk about your coaches, and how you've been able to create that success that permeated down to the boys and into the community as a whole.
It's the best staff in Arizona. There's no question in my mind. And I've coached with great coaches. This staff right now is unbelievable. And we talk about it, we get made fun of. There's people in the community, everyone's like, you guys have more kids than players.
More, yeah, coach.
And it's something that I've always believed. I want 13, you need something.
No, go ahead. Keep going.
I want 13, 14 coaches, so every kid on the team has someone that they relate to. Some are going to relate to me. Some are going to relate to Coach Alba. Some are going to relate to Coach Haas. Some are going to go to Kyron Walker or Shane Slade or Ross Eager. They're all going to have someone that they look to and say, well, I feel comfortable with him. If I need to talk to anybody, I can talk to him, or all of those things. And I just look at this staff, and that's like as a whole, how hard they worked and how much they work, not just for wins. And that's what I think made this a special group of coaches, is they care, okay, what's going on in your life? They're asking these questions. I mean, I don't know how, and it's a different coach all the time. Coach Alba has some that he's sitting and talking to. He's meeting with them every morning. They're joking around watching the interviews. They love it.
That. We laugh at that. We
and,
make it. So.
And I just see that, and there's something I was going to talk about on Monday at this thing when we talk, is I wish everyone out there saw these kids how we see them. Because it's like a parent. You see your kids a certain way, and you're like, I wish everybody saw my kids how I see my kids. And we get that glimpse into these kids' lives that not everyone gets to see. And it makes it a special thing for us, but then each coach takes that on. You got Ray saying, you know what, I have a good relationship with this kid, I'll talk to him. You have Coach Haas saying, let me pull him aside. And sometimes Coach Haas isn't the most, what's the word?
Nurturing.
Yeah,
I think.
nurturing.
No, he's not
Is there a
nurturing.
word? I don't know if there is.
But this is the thing. And we've talked about it as coaches. I've talked about it with him. And I tell the kids, because you have kids with him sometimes are, well, he's always on my case. And I said, do you understand Haas 101? This is what I call it.
Mm-hmm.
It's Haas 101. It starts. He's going to break you down and see if mentally you can do what he needs you to do. And once they understand that, they're like, oh, he doesn't hate me. It's like, boom, the light goes off, and they're like, oh, he wants to help me. And then they see it, and then you see these tiny little lines that we take all over the place that are going up against 250, 260-pound defenses, and we're winning the battle. It's because that thing of those coaches and Coach Alba taking these guys and what I said before, molding them for 3 years to be able to where they're just like, they're running college defenses and no one knows it. We talk about it all the time. They're just like, they don't really know how advanced they are because he's made it so, he taught them in a way that it's like, oh, this is easy to do. I get it. And so, and I look at Coach Trickey, the hours he spent watching film. So that's, I'm talking forever, but all of these coaches added something each week that I was just like, and throughout the season that I was like, I am so grateful that we have this group. I couldn't do it without them. And I've told the administration, so I'm like, if I don't have these guys, it's not going to work. So let's keep these guys. So.
I see each one of those boys has a coach or two that they personally connect with at a deeper level than he's my line coach or he's my offensive coach or he's just the coach. And I've even gone to the point of saying that if I was out of town for something and Rustin needed help, I know that there would be a couple guys that he could call if he felt the need to, and I know that those people would be Tricky and Alba because he's the ones that he raves about when he's talking about practice, when he's talking about what's going on. And so I see it and I love it. And so thank you, because this is so much more than about football. And you guys have been able to share that. Whether the boys realize it or not, this is so much more than football. But let's talk about football. Okay. Let's talk about the season. You guys have talked about how it's the weight room, and that's January. The boys are enjoying their couple weeks off right now, but they know come 2026, we're back in the weight room and they're after it, and they know and they're ready. But let's talk about the season, things that you guys think are pivotal moments, highlights, things that really like geared us, massaged us, got us to the place that we are. So we talked about the weight room. Let's go to camp. We had spring ball, let's go camp, and you guys just, what was meaningful as you guys stepped through the season? What made a state championship team?
Well, I like the story Brad kind of talked about at camp. He talked about Round Valley Outlaws. It's something we kind of, the kids really bought into. And mine talk was a very similar talk. Brad and I kind of were very like-minded when we talk and stuff. We're like, oh, I was going to say the exact same thing. And so it was cool that he brought in the Outlaws. And we talked back to COVID and how Round Valley was like, we're not wearing masks. It's kind of an outlaw community. We're not really like go with the way of the world. And so we didn't really ever set goals. Like everyone has the goal to win a state title, right? But no one talked about it. They said, you have the talent. We told them at camp, you have the talent. But we're not going to talk, like we're just going to go and be the Outlaws, and we're going to just go. And then my talk was a nightmare, to be the nightmare. We're going to crush dreams, not wish and hope for a state title and goals and do the dream side. So we wanted to be more of a kind of that outlaw, that bad guy, kind of embrace that. And then I think if you kind of think back through the season, the Pima deal, I don't like it. Personally, it's not my favorite, planting the flag and all that. But we can't tell them that this is what their style of play is, and to be that nasty swarm and punish and that offensive style of just nonstop, relentless. When we got going on teams, our offense was unstoppable on that way. And so, like, you look at that, and that mentality our kids had was that outlaw, kind of like go against the grain. It's us against the world kind of deal. And that was a pretty cool thing that camp that I think was very significant for our season.
I think the state would definitely see you guys as a dark horse, right? We were the outsiders. We weren't the one, but the stats showed it over the course of the year. We rise to where we ended up at number 3. But I think all of the focus and the eyes were on the big schools, were on Benjamin Franklin, and just the season that they were having. And whatever that meant, whether they were underestimating us or whatever that meant, I do feel like I like the nightmare the outlaw, the dark horse, playing it a differently, almost like the anti-hero, as it were. So, Coach Baca, how about you? Early season, where were we
Going
headed?
on that camp thing, because I wish everybody that has emotion, I guess, could have been at that speech about the nightmares of the Outlaws. I was telling him after it, I was like, could we just play the season tomorrow? After that speech, I'm like, let's go right now. Because it was one of those where, and you saw it with the kids, sometimes you give speeches and you're like, that didn't really resonate. That just went in one ear and out the other. And then sometimes you see speeches that you're like, they go and write out the thing when you're like, okay, let's get a break and get out of here. And they chant what you just said. So it's 1, 2, 3 nightmares. And it's like, okay, they bought into this.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that throughout the whole season, is they had this belief, they had this like want to be that nightmare, want to be Outlaws. And like you said, they embraced it. They embraced when you see Brenton Walker hit Seton Catholic's receiver on the first, or even going before that, where Lane hits the running back in the hole and it just erupts. The sideline erupts and then Brenton hits that guy. The sideline erupts, the whole team goes crazy. And it's like they have embraced what we're talking about. We're going to play like that on defense. We're going to attack you on offense. We're going to make life miserable for you. And then you see special teams later in the season come more into play of, now we're going to come after you in special teams. And we're going to. So all 3 phases of the game, you're living a nightmare every single week. And from the early season, I mean, you watch that Seton Catholic game, and I think, well, I'm going to even go before that, Push Ridge. We talked about Push Ridge, and we went into that game, and we've been telling them since spring football, you're the best team in 3A, which is a different message than I think I've ever given or I've had. It's usually the old Coach Lou Holtz, that we're both Notre Dame guys, but he would say, we're not that good. we're not that good. We got to be better than this. And I was like, let's change this up. And we talked about it as coaches. Let's tell them, you're better than everybody. Let's see what they do with this.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like that. They hear this. We're better. We're the nightmare. We're the Outlaws. And then it was like boom, boom, boom. Push Ridge, we go in, and you're still as a coach wondering what you have. You've seen it in practice, and you're like, we're going to be good. But you're like, what are they going to do? Because Push Ridge is the defending 3A champion. We scrimmaged them. They beat us up a couple times before, so we're like, I don't know what's coming. And first play of offense, I tell Cage, I'm like, you better be ready because we're throwing. Complete a pass, 35-yard pass down to the 5-yard line. We score in like 2 extra plays. Defense comes on the field, shuts them down. And it's just that over and over. Once that happened, I think all of us were like, okay, this is special. Like, this is different. Like, they're excited in the locker room. They're buying into that. They're 1, 2, 3 Outlaws when we're leaving the Push Ridge. And so it's like, they knew that early, like, we're a problem for other teams.
Was that a conscious choice to scrimmage the state champions?
It always is. I mean, we want to play, and we talk about it. We want to play the best, and with even Jeff Cochran talking to me, and I know he loves going down there just because he loves Tucson. He wants to travel down there and spend the whole weekend.
That's why we ended up with Push Ridge. Okay.
But he even said before the season, he goes, I think it's good for us to travel to get used to going somewhere else that's hard to play at, getting used to playing somewhere different and playing the 3A champion. And I was like, I'm 100% in agreement. I want to know, I don't want to call out names. I don't want to scrimmage a team that we go and we just destroy.
Sure. What do you learn from that?
And then we're like, well, we still don't know what we are.
Right.
What are we still? But when you're playing the 3A defending champions who made it to the semifinals again, you're like, we know now who we're going to be.
I think a lot of people. So was that the springboard? Did that take you guys into the regular season, and did it just build from there?
Well, and that's just, so we were down there, we talked about we got to get heat acclimated and all this stuff, and then, but it's a mindset. We're like, because you go in there and we had Weapon X, and after the game, I don't know if you're following on Instagram, but he's like, we're the state champs now. That's the video he posted. If you go all the way back and think on Instagram from Chase Luker, He goes and he's got their video, and the kids are very excited about their mentality. So I think it was when it really set in that they have the ability to play with anybody. Because then that next week, if we didn't have that mindset, Seton went 9-2 in 4A the year before. Like, they were a pretty good football team. Lost in the first round to Arcadia, and I think, if I said that right, but they played for the state championship this year in 4A. So they lost the year before in that. So when people were like, they're going to win state easy at 3A, they were good in 4A. So our kids were just kind of like, they embraced that what they wanted to see, that we're going to show everybody, kind of going back to that Outlaws, that against the world, we're going to show the state this week 1 against Seton. And like you said, springboarded us moving forward from that they had the confidence that they just kind of whipped the 3A defending champs in that scrimmage, which it kind of was a little bit of a whooping that they took down there, that the kids we played, any level we put in had success. Like, the kids that were mainly JV kids all year had some success against Push in that scrimmage. So, but then going into Seton, we wanted that. That was like, if you see Lane early, Lane wanted to show everybody in the state that he doesn't care how 4A, it doesn't matter, 4A, 3A, we should be in 2A, it doesn't matter. It didn't matter to us. We'll play anybody that lines up against us, in that kind of mentality. That's where I think, kind of answering that did springboard us into that. Because if we wanted to listen to all the critics, Seton should have came in here as a 4A team coming down to 3A and just worked us.
Well, and that's what it said. They were statistically and given number 1 preseason, and talking to players about that before the week before, it was like, and okay, they're ranked number 1, and like, you could just see, looking back now on conversations I had with kids throughout, and players and families and everybody throughout the season, you can see what you guys had put into play in the way that they were responding to things, in the way that they were acting throughout the season. And that's amazing, again, because it was consistent week over week. It wasn't that balance of confidence to cocky didn't ever tip to where it was, well, we beat Seton now and we lost our heads, right? Consistently week over week, you guys kept it and kept moving. So into the early season, we had Florence, we had Pima. You talked a little bit about Pima. Was there anything else in the early season that really shaped us? Maybe go through the first 5 games through maybe St. John's.
I think that definitely was a springboard. I think beating Seton was a big deal for our kids, for our coaches, for our team. But going into Florence, it's one of those things early on in the season, you don't really know how other teams are. And I mean, you saw Florence actually towards the end of the season, you're like, hey, this is a pretty good football team. And we, kind of like Seton and Push Ridge, we kind of took it to them. Mm-hmm. And I'm not bagging on them because they were a great program, but that was just another thing where we're seeing, like, we still, and to be honest with you, in Florence and Pima, there were parts of the game we did not play really well. And so each week, I think, as a coaching staff, we bring it to the kids on Monday as, okay, you won, but what do we have to work on? And they can look at it 2 ways. They could be, and we had some of this, we had a little bit of like, you guys seem like you're mad even when we win. And we had to explain at one point, like, the coaches have the standards way up here.
Yeah.
And we understand, like, we give you the credit for winning, but if you guys want to be great, it's got to be better every week. And you hear about the whole growth mindset and all these things that coaches talk about. But that part of it to where it's like, okay, we just have to be able to forget last week, say, okay, we beat Seton Catholic, who cares?
Right.
We're moving on to Florence, and then they go into Florence. And I think it was, because we as coaches, I think, have a big chip on our shoulder. And it goes back to that we're the underdog and we're little. But we almost don't, and I don't feel this way. I get asked all the time, will you guys appeal down to 2A? And I'm like, absolutely not. I'm like, I feel like we say these things to our kids of, well, we should be in 2A, or the refs didn't do this, or if this would have happened. It's like, no, it's on us. We have the ability to win. So we go there, we show up, we do what we're supposed to do. There are no excuses. There's no reason we can't win. So stop using, we should be in 2A. So I'm saying over here, we're all saying it, we want to win in 3A. we want to go from, we're the smallest school in 3A, and we want to show everybody. So I think that chip on the shoulder from the coaches kind of bled into the kids to where they're like, it doesn't matter that we won last week. How bad can we beat the next team? How bad are we going to come in and humiliate these guys? And it was never that we thought, like you said, we're cocky. We didn't feel that way because the kids never put that off like, oh, we're just better than everyone. They went out there and said, we just want to prove to you every week, the whole state, like we're serious. Like we're serious and we want to do this. And I think that's what you saw in those first few weeks going into St. John's. St. John's was a great football team, as everyone saw.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the cleanest game again. We didn't have a clean game on either side of the ball, but those kids found ways to do things and found ways to overcome, okay, we're not playing well, we're struggling a little bit. But they were like, okay, we know we're there. We know we're the better team. But
And mine is, I think, the growth we saw from our other kids that stepped up with due to injuries in the early on. We were missing, after the first game, we are missing 3 starters pretty much for the next 4 or 5 weeks, whatever it would end up being. And that's where we seen kids step up, and we were able to put stuff on younger kids that were valuable roles. Like we saw that Titan can come in and be a starting safety for us, like, and be good for us. And now I have him ready to go for the next season as a junior next year. So that's just the thing I think is our growth. And we had guys when we needed things, we're like, hey, move him here, and let's go make plays and go. And we never were like, licked our wounds, if you will. Like, we never were like pouting, oh, we don't have him. Like, and that's why I love the staff. They're like, well, we'll just move him here and him here, and we'll be good to go. We can play Friday night. We'll be fine. We'll compete. And that's the kind of, and then I think the kids, and we don't really like, and we don't sell like the kids, but I always call them like, what's up, Cripple, when they're there, like, because I want them to come back. But then it's just like, who's next? Like, I always tell them, you're dead to me. You're not playing. And then they're like, oh, what do you mean, Alba? And I'm like, no, just because like right now you're not. I got to get somebody else ready because you're out right now. And so I try to break it that thing. It's like a joking mentality, but they got to know is what to help this team. And if you're in it like we are, you got to help and coach who's behind you in your position. And I think that was something we did this year. Was our varsity kind of stepped out, and then I played our JV and helped them put younger kids in, or the kids kind of, some of our lower varsity guys or whatever that aren't, most of our seniors would step out and go against them, and then our varsity guys would go there and coach the JV kids. Hey, on Bear, you're doing this on this block. And it was just really cool to see Jeffrey coaching down to the Bear position from being the senior that normally would check out and want to go talk in the back. Jeffrey's going down and coaching a kid down to that side. So they see it where they're, just because they're out doesn't mean they're out, they're dead to us. We want them to be a valued position and try to get to go that way. And that's why I think early in the season we found some studs that wouldn't have came along to where we needed them at the end if we didn't have that bright spot in the injury. We took it as a bright spot and growth instead of a lick our wounds type material.
So would you consider Blue Ridge being one of those then? Because that's kind of where we're at in the season right now. And again, as we broadcast the games, as we talk in between the games, we're talking as well. What was that? Was that needed? Was it a necessary evil? Was it a wake-up call? What was it? So we hit the power band of the season, beginning with Blue Ridge, into just this hard-hitting mountain area. Let's go Blue Ridge, Show Low, Payson, crazy town. Talk to us about that.
yeah, Blue Ridge, I believe, was the best thing that had happened to us in the season. I don't like to lose, so it's hard to say that's a great thing. Like, it's hard for that to come out of my mouth. But at that point, like I think we said, like we talked about from Seton to there, we had good games, but we weren't really there. We were we play good for a quarter, and then we don't play good for the second quarter. Or we play good in the second and third quarter, but we don't finish, or whatever it was. We were just kind of never really always in 100%. And the Blue Ridge game, I mean, you watch it, and hats off to them. They played great. They were coached well. They played well. and they played hard. But our kids played hard. They just didn't have enough time. Like, we just kind of ran out of time. But it was one of those things where I think we came out of it, and we talked about it on Monday, that next Monday, is there's an old thing of event plus response equals outcome. And it was, you have the choice. What's our response? Do we choose to pout and say, well, maybe we're not that good? Maybe we're really not. Or is our response, that's a blip. That's a learning experience. That's something we take what we can learn out of this and get past it. And when we played Payson, I think you saw the answer to what the response was, because they came out ready to play.
And I think we saw that over and over again, that their actions spoke way louder. We didn't see, again, that cocky versus confidence thing. You didn't hear the kids. They weren't, we're going to, like, we're just going to show up, and you're going to see in 4 quarters what it's all about. And we saw that.
My thing was, defensively, we didn't play well in that game. But what I kind of really created a good relationship with is our quarterback, if that might sound weird. But I think in that game, our quarterback, Cage, was able to start he made plays to kind of get us out of that hole. And like Brett said, we ran out of time and at the end and was just right there. And now, after every time, I'd be like, I remember going back to now the playoff game against Seton, I came off and I was like, you got to save me right here. Our defense just let one score on my bad. And he's like, I got you, Alba. And it was from that Blue Ridge point that he was like, he was going to save us on, like, defense gave one up, we got you on offense. And that's where I think in that moment, like, Cage and I became that, like, you got to save the DC here, Cage. Like, come on, help me out here. And so I think that's something I really saw Cage grow in that thing, because he pulled us out of that. If you watched the first quarter of Blue Ridge, you thought we were going to get beat by 45 points. And so I think that's where I really kind of saw and really open up, is that offensive being like, okay, we're the saviors today. And like I said, defensively, it hurts my heart on that game. Thinking back, something I definitely graded myself in a negative way, but I failed that game. But like Brad said, I think it was what we needed to really kind of grow from that point in the season.
All right, so back half of the regular season, then we got Sholo. You already talked a little bit about Payson. Payson became the response to Blue Ridge, right? And then Sholo, and then we end the season with some games on the road that prepare us for the playoffs. And so what got us ready for the playoffs in the back half of the season?
I think all of that. I mean, the Payson game was almost just like okay, we knew how good we were, and we got to show it again. And they came out and played pretty much one of the best games we played all season. I mean, every phase, we looked good. They played hard, and that was a good Payson team. I mean, they had one of the best players in the state, and he really didn't do a whole lot. And credit to the defense.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just the defensive scheme, and I say this over and over again, but it was just every week there was a plan. And I mean, you saw it in the state championship game. The plan was, this is what we need to slow down or stop. And it worked. And Payson, it works. And then we go into Sholo. And it's, once again, we don't play great against Sholo. We didn't play that great. But the kids found the way to win. And I think that was another big game that's kind of overlooked with a lot of people. It was 21-21 in the fourth quarter. It wasn't like all these other games we were blowing people out. And Sholo was a good team. They were hitting us. It was physical. And our kids just found a way. I mean, we go drive down, score. We get a big 4th down stop. And it was another one of those games where you had that feeling of, like, these guys are just going to figure it out. Like, these kids, like you said a minute ago, you throw them out there and they're, okay, we'll do it. We'll take it from here. Like, and they would every week. And then those getting to travel down to the valley. I know those weren't hard games for us, but getting used to just getting in that. Okay, you got to get off the bus and you have to prepare, because we talked about that. It doesn't matter if we're playing Payson, Sholo, Apache Junction, Sandtown Foothills. You have to prepare the same way. You have to be ready to go the same way. And sorry, I'm talking forever, but backing up to the Blue Ridge game, one thing that we didn't mention that I think was an important part of this season is, I think as coaches, we realize this team isn't, because we've all been raised a certain way as coaches and as players, of it's serious. You focus. You're 100% like, there's no laughing, there's no joking. We're coming here, and when we're at practice, It's all business.
So White Girl Wednesdays.
Yeah.
It is a thing. It is a thing for
And
us.
I think after Blue Ridge, just talking to some of the kids and having these conversations of what makes you guys tick, like what do you guys need? And it was like, we just want to have fun. That was really the response that comes back, to where as a coach you're kind of like, what does that even mean? Like, fun to me is just winning, but fun to them is we want to have fun winning. And I think that changed a lot of how we did things and how we went into practices and games of let them just be who they are. Because this is the goofiest group of kids you'll ever be around. And when they're, like he said at the first, when they come out for a Thursday defensive practice the week of the state championship in just girdles and shoulder pads, that tells everyone who they are. They want to just be loose and joke around and enjoy what they're doing, which if you really look at it, you should enjoy the whole journey. It shouldn't be miserable and work and, oh, we got to go to practice. Like, here's practice again. And you see the things that we've talked about too of they showed up to practice and instead of laying on the sideline like every other year I've coached before practice for 20 minutes because they're like, oh, we're going to have to run. Practice is going to suck. They're out there playing punt, pass, kick. They're throwing with each other. They're running routes. I mean, linemen are punting. They're just having fun playing football. And I think that's when it was one of those wake-up moments for me as a coach where I learned something, where I'm like, it doesn't have to just be one way. You have to adapt to how kids act, especially this day and age. Like, you have to be able to say, okay, this group's serious, but this group is not. So how do we coach them and let them do what they want to do and, flourish in their world? And I think that was something that as coaches we were able to let them do, and I think it worked. I mean, we saw Payson, and it was, I remember texted all the coaches saying, well, maybe this works. And everyone's like, apparently it does. So they were like, all right. But,
We talk about second half adjustments and how you guys historically have come out as a different team in the second half. And Payson's kind of the halftime of the regular season. And so how interesting to see that there was an adjustment made and to see that the horsepower that it really gave, the fruits that came from letting them be the best version of themselves, letting them be the team that they wanted to be. And so we've talked about a number of times that they found a way. The kids found a way. They found a way to do it. Don't lose your thought, Alba. But how much autonomy does the team have? Because you're telling me they found a way to win that game. They made it happen. What autonomy have you extended? Because that's an extension of trust at the end of the day to those young men.
Well, and to go to that point, kind of moving, because I was just going to say ditto for Brad.
No.
Brad nailed that question. So what I love about that season, we were in the Chrisman playoff game, and you could see that kind of going with the kids come off, and they wanted to run a play because they were starting to get kind of chippy. The game was getting real chippy toward the end. And both the quarterback, our Cage and Jeffrey, run off, and they said, we want to run nose, because where Jeffrey comes across and just tees off on the nose. And they said run it, and they wanted to run it because they wanted that. That was a physicality thing that they came on. So, all right, run it, and then run, bam. And then they're like, what do you want to run it again? And it was like, so they had that mentality, and so that's where the kids, and they said they had the power. That's where they checked into that point where they wanted to establish that kind of mentality. Like, and if you go even further into that later in the game, like where Jeffrey goes on that little bubble swing to right there at going into the end zone. I told Jeffrey, I said, Jeffrey, you could have walked, like, you could have just made that miss. And he's all, I had to run over number 2. So that was the stuff, that autonomy, that kind of go into your question at that point where we gave them, let them have it. That's what our leadership was, coming off to the sideline and telling Brad, we're going to run this because we wanted to be more physical. He wanted to set a tone in the state championship game, running over number 2 and hitting him. Going to that was a mentality thing, and so that's kind of to answer your question in that regard. That's where they did that. They were the ones that made that choices.
The power to let them lead themselves.
Mm-hmm.
that Chrisman game, I forgot about that. And that was one of my proudest moments as an offensive coordinator I've ever had in 15 years. And it's going back to what he said, to have your quarterback who loves to throw. Like, Cage was amazing this year. and he loves throwing the ball. He loves throwing touchdowns, which I'm the same kind of guy. I'm like, I want to air it out. I want to throw it, but I want to run too. To have your quarterback and Jeffrey run over the sideline and do what they did and say, let's run this. Because it's a run play. It's a straight ahead run to Jackson Crick is running the ball. And, I mean, to finish that off, Jackson Crick runs over both of their safeties to score the touchdown. So that just was a proud moment as a coach, because you're saying, like he said, like Alba said, is they don't want to just score. They want to prove something still. So the chip is still there. You know what I mean? You're still seeing that. We're still proving things. We're showing them, you want to get chippy with us. You got 1,441 kids in your school. We got less than 400. We're still going to outman you. Like we're still going to be more physical. And that's why I was just like, not that you get choked up, but you get a little choked up when they're running off and you're just like, run it again. And it was beautiful to see, but so I'm glad you brought that up because I almost forgot about that whole thing.
Well, if any other moment you wonder about buy-in, you wonder about are they there, how much more of a statement do you need to know that they're in and that they buy the vision of what you guys are trying to put together when they see it and they're able to lead themselves and it's successful. They have a vision that it's not just out of anger, it's not just for revenge because they were being chippy, so we're going to be chippy. They made a statement and proved a point.
Well, going on the trust thing that you said, I had quite a few people in town ask me, like, you go for it on fourth down a lot. And I'm like, because it was the Sholo game? Sholo, we have 4th and 7 or something on our 35 maybe.
Fairly deep.
Our own 35. And I remember turning around and I'm like, because I don't want to put the defense in a horrible spot. So I look at Alba and he doesn't even hesitate. He's like, go for it. So I look at the offense and I'm like, let's run it. Cage runs for a first down and we score on that drive. And we talked about that later in the season of the reason that we trust them, like they trust us, but we will trust them in any situation. That's why we're running it on fourth down. Because in my mind, I'm like, yeah, the wise choice is probably to punt. I mean, there have been times it's bitten me, I'm not going to lie. But the trust that we had of, okay, do this. And I'll even go all the way back earlier into the season of, you know, some people they put on defense that you're a little skeptical. You're like, I don't know if this is going to work. And Alba, Tricky, they trusted them. And they said, we believe you're going to do this. And they see that, and then they perform. Eli Pena coming in at the end of the season. I had kids tell me that Eli Pena came in that championship game and didn't even look like he was one bit worried or fazed. And he's covering the co-player of the year for 3A, number 2 from Ben Franklin, and it never even fazed him. And that's that trust that these guys put in him early. It wasn't like they put the trust in him last week and said, you know what, we're going to need you next week. We might need you. It was 7-on-7. Hey, you're going in at corner. And the trust was built. So then when it's easy, when they see that, when they're like, these guys trust us for everything. I think as a player, you love that. You love to see, you know what? I mean, you watch Dan Campbell from the Lions. That's what I like. I love that he's just like, we're going for it on 4th and 2 because we're better than you. Mm-hmm. And we're going to get it because we're tougher than you. Or we're going to do this on defense because we believe that we can do it. And in all of the stats and on paper and all of these things, you look at some of the teams we played that you're like, how did we do this? And I think a lot of that, like Coach Alba, Haas, they put this trust in kids that some people might have been like, are you sure? Like, are you positive?
And they may have been thinking that too a little bit.
And you know? I think I will guarantee that kids at some point are, I don't know if I can do it. But then when they see my coach knows I can do it.
Yeah.
And over, because I think you see that, I mean, going back to Cage, we had talks all year long about Cage, and this is one of the things later in the season I started telling him, you're the best player on the field. And I think he started saying, like, I'm the best player. Not because I did anything special, but because he said, my coach believes in what we're doing. And you see it on defense. You saw it with Cooper Bingham at center. Not everyone is going to put Cooper Bingham at center. And Haas put him in, and snaps are a little shaky here and there. And then once he knew that Haas believed in him 100%, it was like he was one of the best centers in the state. And I'm like, that's where that trust, that belief, that putting it in the kids' hands paid off, because they believed and they knew, like, everyone believes in us, so we can do whatever we need to do. So it was awesome to see.
So we kind of started creeping into the state championship game. Let's talk Valley Christian. Let's talk Benjamin Franklin. I think your point about Eli Pena, when you started talking about the unexpected, or who's that kind of deep, like immediately the person I thought of, just the plays he made in the state championship game alone. But again, it was everybody doing that. I think we could watch the footage again, and you'll find standout plays from every single player on the field. You'll find moments where everybody had brilliance that created the win for the Elks. And so let's talk about travel for Trojans, and let's talk about the championship game against the Chargers. What made those games what they were?
Well, I love both of them. We started at 7-0. They are up on both games. And not a single kid, not a single thing, and that's the kind of the mentality of this team. We've talked about it all this whole time. No one flinched. No one said nothing. Like, it was just like, we'll get it. We'll be all right. We'll fix it. We got it. And so that was where I think on both of those games, you look back, it was the kind of the mentality of our team was like, all right, they scored. What's next? What do we need to do here? I moved a couple of things, checked, and then all of a sudden it was like on that Valley game. Kamari was blitzed inside, which normally he will blitz inside. On this blitz I called, I wanted him to go outside. Mental error. He fixed it, and he played to the rest of that ref. From that thing on, if you look all the way into the championship game, Kamari had a heck of a play where he split two guards, and they were on the ball 1st and 10, and going from their 40, he split two guards, made a negative play. Now they have to punt. Or they go, I think they went for it on 4th on that one. No, it flipped fields, and they went for it, and that was the thing where Kamari comes in and makes a play, but Kamari never flinched. He could have pouted and said, "Oh, I gave up a score, and we lost 2 series before he got back into the game." Never missed. Came back in on the next series and just played, kind of continued playing on, and that was what I loved about that. And then that rain-soaked game of that crazy, defensive football. And so other than after that play, they really didn't have anything until we kind of went into our prevent defense and prevented us to play good defense, and that's kind of where I think looking back on that one is where we kind of dominated in that semis. If we'd have just played our normal defense, which kind of, again, going back to myself grading myself out, I don't like what I did there. So that's where kind of in that thing we dominated that way. And I was just saying, but kind of like going back to that mentality of like for Kamari to just see that and never miss and continue making plays all the way through after like just that step up, and another one of our senior leaders that you're like kind of going from that regard. So
you talked about liking to go to the air, and we were worried. A lot of people were worried with it going to be wet. Forecast was just miserable. We showed up at 3:00. You guys are sitting in the bus because they wouldn't let you out, and literally we walk out and it starts pouring, and it doesn't decide to stop. And it wasn't crazy, but it was wet. And so our worry was, is that going to affect our pass game? Talk to us about the semifinals, Coach.
Okay, one of the things we preach, and it's probably started when I started talking about this, is we got to control what we can control. I talked to the kids trying to relay this message, but one of the biggest things was for myself, and this is a few years ago, is I would look at weather forecasts every 10 minutes and be like, because the worst thing for an offensive coordinator sometimes, especially back with Riker Marvel, his hands were like this big, is you're like, if it rains, certain things we do, we're going to struggle.
Right.
And so rain is one of those things you're like, is it going to be pouring? And going back to the trust is, I remember talking to Cage, or the team, and even talking to Cage personally and being like, it's going to rain. And we even had him snapping wet footballs and Cage throwing wet footballs. And going back, like the special thing about this team is Cage never once said, "Or like, what if it's wet? Like, what if it rains a lot? Like, are we gonna still throw?" He was just like, "Hey, are we gonna still run these?" But I'm like, he never really questioned it. He's just, "Okay, we're running 48 seam pass where he throws it to Jeffrey and he's throwing a perfect pass." And someone just told me yesterday, I think it was his grandpa, told me the most amazing thing from that game was, he's like, no one dropped a pass. And I said, yeah, that was true. Like, no one dropped the ball. And I think it goes all the way back to what we've been talking about, like you said, that mental fortitude that they have of nothing matters. There is no excuse. There is nothing that comes up that we can't control, that we're not going to say, or that we can't get past, even if we can't control it. Like, we don't know what the refs are going to do. We don't know what the weather's going to be. We don't know how good they are. We don't know how big they are. It didn't matter. They still said, yeah, we're going to come out and do this. And when I see that the kids, the quarterback, have this confidence that's sky high, I'm like, well, we might as well throw the ball and see what we can do. And I think we threw the ball better than we threw the ball most of the year.
100%.
And Cage had a great game, and it was a testament to him being able to take what we have told him of, don't worry about things, just play football and have fun. And they did it. And it was a worry for a coach, but even leading up to the game, I remember telling myself, because my wife is always like, you got to just stop, like, thinking about this. And so I'm leading up to the game, and I'm just like listening to her voice tell me, like, stop worrying about it. Just, we can't control it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those, like, where you can almost get at peace, where you're like, it's going to rain. Like, it's going to rain the whole time.
Right.
So let's just do it, because we're good. So, yeah, that was a fun game. It was awesome. It was, I mean, he acts like the defense just because of the very end. And I mean, in reality, that game was more like a 42-7 game.
Yeah.
So the defense until the last few minutes was great and amazing. And they played the scheme again. I mean, they had athletes, and they were held in check. So it was once again a credit to the kids, but to the scheme he put together.
Okay. Okay. Last week, Thanksgiving, you guys are wrecking everybody's Turkey Day plans, and here we go. Mountain Point. Talk to me about the Chargers. Talk about Benjamin Franklin.
Well, like I said, they were good. Definitely a very good football team to stop, because they had 3 or 4 receivers, 2 big backs, a quarterback that could really sling the ball. I didn't give as much credit as I did scouting him. I was he's all right. He'll be good. He's a good quarterback. He could throw well. And then you see him put his accuracy in the game. But like I said, kind of to our kids, and I think it really set in as we do a weekly scouting report, and kind of going from that, going that route was the kids believed and started really reading. Like they did what most school kids do. They look over, I got the gist of it. Then they started to go in and seeing, okay, the Chrisman week really kind of started to be like, let's really just read this for a sec, like really get in depth to what we're kind of expecting. Like I said, every position coach on defense grades out each week. They grade out every position on every play and huddle, and we send it to the kids so they can kind of have just some coaching points as they're watching film to try to have that, again, that mental check of try to get better. So going into Ben Franklin, they read the scouting report. They knew we got to be multiple here. What is this formation that's up to? And like we go into 65% they run here, 80% they pass in this formation. So our kids were now starting to see it, and you could see like our scene, like, and then having like Trenton Trickey, who was in that game, the defensive MVP. He was calling out things and pointing, well, this guy's here, and they would try to block him to set a bubble up for their best, the co-player of the year, number 2, and Trenton was unblockable because he knew that was coming in that formation. So just to see the study and the kids, what they did on that side of it was the mental preparedness going into that. Like, even if we did dress in girdles and stuff on Thursday, they were still mentally checked in for what we needed to do just their way to do it. And that's where, like Brad said earlier, that we allowed them to be them and checking into that route, which now defensively, we played a phenomenal defensive game across the board with the 4th down stop, the couple block punts. But again, we talk about this is where I want to attack. I tell Lane Hill, I want the strength called to this side when we go to punt block, and I want you to go hit the kid into him. They believed it, did it, and then you see that, and as you see as a coach, that's where your most proud moment is. I can watch in there, and then you see them. What you wanted to happen, and what you put in the scouting report, they made happen. And then you see, and that's your most proud moment. Like everyone's gonna say, the state championship and all that. My favorite part of the year is watching our kids communicate on defense. That was my most. If you look out there, their hand signals are doing this. You see them pointing to who's their kid, and that's the thing. Is your most proud moment? As I kind of choke up about that a little bit, is that was where my most proud moment was.
No, when he talked about the preparation, I was talking to Trenton Trickey after the school board meeting the other night, and we were talking about that play, that 4th and 1, and he said, I've watched this with my dad and with Coach Alba over and over. I know what they're going to do on 4th and 1. And he said, all I kept thinking is what they told me, don't go too far upfield, knife down and make the play. And he said, so I did what I was asked. And I said, you did exactly what you were asked, and it worked. And he had a phenomenal game. I look at what he's brought to this team, and not only as a football player, but just how good of a kid he is. Like, he's such a good kid. And he fit right in, and another testament to our team about brotherhood and team was they just brought him in. A lot of times an outsider, it's hard to come in and fit in and be part of it, and they brought him in, and he was part of the team. And then to have him play like he did in that moment after all of his setbacks throughout the last 2 years of injuries and just not being able to be 100%, and be able to do that and make that play and be proud of that play. And not only just be proud of it, but the person he is, he gives a lot of the credit to his coaches, like his dad and Alba, saying, they showed me, like, this is what I got to do. And I'm like, that preparation going into that game, especially defensively, and the game plan we had, I never doubted in that game. I've had so many people say, well, were you worried when they marched right down the field and scored the touchdown? And my response to everyone, it's probably been asked to me 25 times. And my response every time was, well, Christian scored in 2 plays. I said, did you guys worry then? And they're like, oh, that's a good point. And I said, I knew our defense probably wasn't going to give up a whole lot more. Because this happens. You kind of have, you don't know, especially on defense, correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't really know. And as an offensive coordinator, your best plays are a lot of times your first drive. You're saying, we're running the best things we have to get out fast. So, and as a defense, you're still being like, okay, what are they trying to do? Are they trying to do what we saw on film? Are they trying to do all these things? So then it's, okay, we just took their best shot. They scored, whatever. Sure. Okay, now we know what they want to do. They're doing exactly what we've been telling the kids all week. So now it's just settle down, get back to what we're doing. Nothing huge has to change. Just get back in there and play football. And you saw it. The rest of the game they played, I mean, it was, I have used the word miraculous, to be honest with you. Because when you see, they got a kid from Stanford that plays guard, or is going to Stanford that is their guard. Signed with Stanford the Monday after. And to be able to see these guys be able to take on something like that kind of an offense that had just mowed through people through a whole season and never really was slowed down. I mean, even the games they were kind of closer, they kind of scored when they wanted to score. And seeing it happen and knowing that our kids would not let up, and I think that's the difference that they had never seen, I'm talking about Ben Franklin, is they broke people. They would break people throughout the year. And even teams that were physical, they kind of got to a point where it's like, okay, now we have you, and you're done, and we're going to win. And they did, all year. And I think they were we've talked about it, and I think at a point, and their coaches may never admit it, their kids may never admit it, but there was a point in that game where they thought to themselves, are they ever going to stop hitting us? Like, are they ever going to quit doing this? And it was no, because that's their mentality. That's that chip on their shoulder. That's how they felt the whole year, is they knew, like, this is what we want. Now we just have to go get it. We have to take it. He gave a speech about his dad telling him to take it in roping. And it was another one of those where I was like, I gotta put the pads on. Like, but it was one of those where I thought about that. They went out and they didn't just wait for something to happen. Haas has talked about it in a lot of our locker room talks of, you guys can't wait for Cage to make a play. You can't wait for Brody to make a play, or Jeffrey or Brenton. All of you have to have that mentality of, I'm going to make a play, and you saw it. Brody Calipolo making plays, Kamari making plays, Eli making plays, Lane and all the regulars making big plays, Case and Finch making plays. And you're like, they just kept doing it over and over and over, to where even as a coach standing on the sideline where your offense is struggling a little and you're a little like, come on, I wish we could just get offense going, but you're over there sitting there like, as a fan almost, like, this is unbelievable what our defense is doing. And little Jackson Crick blocking a punt and scoring and making a big sack. And it's just, that's where I'm like, these kids, why they were special is that reason, is there's no quit. There's nothing phased them. I asked a few of them after that thing, how come you guys never seem like you were worried? Like, you never had that feeling of, well, we don't know, like the doubt creeping in. And Jeffrey Cochran said it best. He's like, I knew we were going to win because we're tougher than they are. And I said, that's not just because you learn that right now. It's because you learn that in all of these years of, and I'm even going to go back to the Rikers teaching these kids this stuff. The Connor Lukers who started the weight room of, we got to go to the weight room, Wyatt Hetrick. Those guys are building that up to where all of these kids bought in and listened to that and saw that example and were like, we want to be that, but better. And it paid off at the end. And I mean, and one of the most beautiful things I saw, and I told Kylie and his dad, Ronnie, was with Cage in that championship game. He didn't have the best game. Offensively, I didn't have the best game. But every time the defense was on the field, I'm getting choked up, but every time the defense would come off, they call a timeout, or they come to the sideline, Cage is the first one in the huddle. And he's cheering them on, and I'm like, that's why we won. That's why we're so good. It's because all of them had that. This is awful. But they had that, like, love for each other. That it's not about me. It's not about me playing well. It's about us winning. And that's why when that happened, and I told him that in a text, but it's just those things you see as a coach, like Coach Alba said, is football, winning state championships is amazing. It's one of the best feelings in the world. But to see them change and grow as people and to see what they can do is what is more, you get more proud of. That you're like, they can do anything. They can be great husbands, great fathers. They're going to be great people because they know what it takes to be great. And so it's a special group, and that's why they were. Sorry, I
love it. It's good.
I got strong, but
I didn't.
The other day I was like, when you go to work and everyone's asking you, sometimes you're like, all right, like I've talked about this so
The 10th
much.
time or whatever.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't want to talk about it. But then when you get around the guys that were with you, the kids, the coaches, you're like, I could do this for hours.
Mm-hmm.
You could sit there and talk about, because you start bringing up things that you're like, I forgot about that thing. And it brings you back to the whole thing of that feeling at that time and how you got to that and how important and special it was. All of the stuff that happened, like every week. And that's what I woke up this morning at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I don't know why it hit me, but I was like, oh yeah, they asked us to speak on Monday night. Like, what am I going to talk? I've kind of thought about it, but I was like, I need to start thinking about this. And I started going through points in the season, and I was getting choked up. Like, I forgot about this. I forgot about, because it's almost like it's been surreal.
Yeah.
To this point, like you're like, this all really just happened. And it's over. Like that season that was so long. It's like, and then it hit me. I don't know why it hit me last night at 3 or this morning at 3 o'clock in the morning, but it just hit me of that was something so amazing. And you start thinking about, you know, I mean, I was thinking about Brenton Walker. I know this isn't all on that thing, but I was talking about Brenton. And we texted. I was running bleachers one day in the summer, and I just started texting him because I'm like, you're the best athlete we have. Do you know that? And he starts talking to me about his worries and his fears and what he doesn't feel like he's that good. And it's like, you start to get to know these things about these kids that you're like, I didn't know you felt that way. And then you're like, how do we build this kid up? And he did a great job. He talks about it. I mean, when he did the senior thing and he brought him his jersey and talked about Alba believed in me forever. And I'm like, that's where it's just those things that you're like, because Brenton probably was the best player overall on our football team. To go from, I don't believe I'm that good, to
Instagram
that
famous.
good. Yeah, you're famous.
Skywalker.
To Skywalker.
And I'm like,
yeah.
and you see that in those kids, and it's like you start thinking about those things. And I like 3 o'clock this morning. I'm just like, why am I getting all choked up? But it's that why that was so fun is because of seeing Cage grow, seeing Brody and Jackson as brothers, just like the love they have for each other, and being able to do that together. It was just all of those little things that not everyone sees that we got to see. And that's why I was just like, this has been the funnest year I've ever coached. And I know he said that too. It was just a fun, and it's because of them. It's not because we did something that we're like, let's make this fun and have Dairy Queen. But it was just, they were fun.